Hello everybody, as this is the 100th YouTube video that I've made, I thought we'd do something a little special, and what could be more special than your mum? Yes, Lindsay was at the Royal Toxophilite Society annual dinner the other day and was asked to do the after-dinner speech. As we weren't allowed to film it at the event itself, here is my mum, Lindsay, practising to camera.
Master Bowyer and fellow Tox members, if you're sitting comfortably, I will begin. I nearly gave up after my first ever arrows I shot. We were living in Africa and Richard had taken his bow and equipment with him. We made up a target and stand just about fitting into our two-door car with some design changes. He sent for a beginner's bow, etc. for me, which finally made its long trip from the UK. We got permission from the rugby club to use their field when slightly too hot to play rugby. When the tuition was over, I was finally allowed out into the field nearest the target while my coach stayed under the shade of the trees. He seemed quite happy with my first attempt. I then returned to my sunny position after he'd shot his arrows and had another go. They've gone in the gold. This time he seemed more agitated and rushed across to the target to find two of my arrows had gone down the aluminium shafts, turning them into pretty flowers. My interpretation. Poor Richard, thousands of miles away from an archery dealer. I offered to stop, but we continued. I practised in the garden, the local children watching from every hole in our hedge, or climbing a tree for a better view. One of my new friends told me the locals called me the long lady with bow. We returned home and I was busy. New house, new baby, a small schoolgirl to see to, and Richard continued with his archery. And one day tried field archery. He followed a family around in front of his group. He came home and wondered if we'd like a go. Philip was 4 years old, but a box of Smarties in his pocket, a box, not a tube, mark you. His sister the same. They wandered along and shot at the targets if they wanted to. It worked. The heads did field archery for many years. Begrudgingly, our daughter Miranda did announce once, at least we did spend Sundays together, unlike her friends whose dads went off to sport of their own. Also, the takeaway Chinese meal every time after competing went down well too. Over the years we have been to several archery champs with 400 to 600 archers competing. Quite a sight at the gathering to begin of the shooting day. All types of bows, t-shirts with dodgy messages, wacky hats, beautiful quivers, lots of decorations with flowers, bells, beadwork on all above. Some very clever handiwork of all kinds. The greeting of old friends on these days was a lovely sight and everybody was so friendly. We are now meeting children of ex-children we shot around with years ago. Yep, we're that old. We're always separated at these champs in case we cheat, it seems. So I spend the day with strangers in the morning, but by the end of the day, new archery friends. We like it like that. There was one day I shot round with two bowyers who make flat bows. A lot of technical talk. They also had separately had visited bowyers in America, and a competition of who had met who took all day, talking of course, while the woman had her go at the target. Did you go to Howard Hill's place His nephew. Yeah, I went there. He wasn't the real thing. No, quite agree. Did you see how he tested his bows? Load of rubbish, etc., etc. I am quite used to being ignored, but in the end, their lack of etiquette and thought for a fellow archer did grate a bit. I joked in the admin tent at the end of the day, handing in my result cards. Can I go round with a group of ladies and one of these guys? We'll talk about babies, knitting patterns, recipes, all day. Cool, the ladies replied. Lindsay, where will we find them? Why do you think we took up archery? Once the O-levels and the A-levels came along, Miranda stopped coming with us to shoots. Philip finally stopped as well. He didn't think it was fair to have to look after Mum and Dad on his own while Miranda stayed at home eating ice cream. We have made lots of friends over the years, been to places up and down the British Isles. Met some wonderful people. One field archer amused me. He was roundish, shortish and loudish. Always had the latest bow or the newest bit to put on it. I overheard someone ask what jewels had he sold to finance the latest thing. Oh, a gold bracelet and a ruby necklace, was the reply. I asked about this jewellery dealer, to be told he's not a jeweller, he's a London sewer man. On a good week, his fines financed his archery purchases. He was a generous man. On our first visit to Agincourt, where we had a field shoot around the village, even a reg peg next to the telephone box didn't faze the French, who waited for some medieval costumed archer to shoot his arrow before gaining entrance to make a call in the box, hoping to get out before the next English archer came along. Our sewer man was spotted inside the town square bar. He appeared to have become the Pied Piper of Agincourt. Children kept appearing and calling to him. Inside, negotiations were going on for the glass jar full of lollipops kept on the bar. The whole jar, monsieur? Yeah. The number of children multiplying as word got round. So much so, another jar, hidden years ago in the long thinned cupboard, was finally reached and brought out as well. The granny, owner of the bar, insisted on counting every lollipop to get the money right. He finally appeared into the town square with the two jars and throwing the lollipops to the children. Great fun. We all enjoyed Agincourt. Even me, who'd spent months beforehand knitting with string fake armour, dyeing garments battleship grey in my faithful Bendix washing machine. I wasn't sure either of us were going to get over it, but we did, and the next wash didn't turn grey. I made a dress for daytime to shoot round in, and another more fancy for the medieval banquet, which we would have at the end of the day and the prize giving. En route, we were changing into our finery at a boarding school. To reach the changing place, we were held outside on a flight of metal stairs, me near the top, Richard near the bottom, while the headmaster explained, ladies in one room, gentlemen in another. That's when I remembered my bra for the evening dress was in the bag Richard had. Richard, I need my bra. It's in that bag. Lindsay. Much rummaging. Finally, is this it? Okay. Here, Barry, pass that up to Lindsay. Here, Pete, pass that along. Dave, that's needed up top. Rodney, that's needed further up. Pass it on, son. Oh, the embarrassment. These archers were were members of the London Archers and Royal Richmond, and it may have been this intimate moment that led them to invite us to their weekend jolly at Green Park near Aylesbury. They hired this venue, once belonging to the Rothschilds, who gave it to the council. The council built accommodation blocks and a conference centre with a large dining hall. The land was a beautiful garden, this particular Rothschild being a plant collector. It was a spectacular place. Part of the garden was made into a small field course. A large field was filled with novelties: a popinjay, large night targets, an old wind-up gramophone cannibalised with a slowly revolving balloon to shoot at, and a garland, the target with the middle knocked out, festooned with plastic flowers. Try getting an arrow through that. It was an amazing experience to try these different things. This was our Saturday. Sunday we did a flight shoot and clout shoot. We were lucky in attending this lovely place for several years. The Saturday night of the weekend was a much looked forward to medieval banquet. Now, different clubs would organise skits and small plays with jokes. A lot of pre-planning. It was to be expected tricks and forfeits to be doled out. One year, having acquired a Scottish member to the family, I decided against the posh frock, makeup and any of that, and dressed in a "See You Jimmy" tam o' shanter hat, an old shirt of Mr. Head's, a kilt, a sporran, long socks with a knife in the top from my kitchen, a dagger in the belt and a Taj shield made from cardboard, and wandered off into the dining room. A sort of Wiltshire's answer to Mel Gibson's Braveheart, but before his time. So Jock was given silly things to do, quite a bit actually. It was only the next day I found out no one knew who Jock had been, well apart from Richard. A hoot. Reenactment was in its infancy at this time. Probably only the Ermine Street Guard and the Sealed Knot were on the go. Living history people were just beginning to go unwashed, eat the food and dress the part of a certain time in history. Kentwell Hall were just digging the time tunnel for the punters to pass through and become a potter or a baker in medieval times for a week. Anyway, we had our first demonstration, weekend in costume at Horsham, along with Hector Cole, the ironworker. We camped in an abandoned bit of green, one portaloo and nothing else. It was Hector, fully dressed in medieval kit, and no milk or water to go on his muesli, potted off to the hospital opposite. Muesli bowl in one hand and his quenching bucket in the other. They sent our medieval metalworker back to us, milk on his muesli and water in his bucket, and not a white-coated doctor following. We spent the morning in the town's main street, Richard making a bow and Hector bashing out arrowheads. I roamed the alleyways in costume of the main streets, all half-timbered buildings, really old and atmospheric. As I walked out of an alleyway into the main street in my medieval dress, a man stared at me, clutching his chest. "Oh my goodness, you did give me a funny turn, dear." Well, at least I knew where the hospital was. Hector had had a teenage boy watching his demonstration all morning. Then to my horror, Hector announced, "Come on Richard, it's lunchtime. Let's go. Here lad, put on my apron. Fill in for me while I get my lunch. Lindsay, guard the bow." This boy looked the part. He played the part, swinging his hammer, pumping the bellows and answering questions. No one realised this amazing moment of trust in a young person to cope. We have gone on to do many such seminars and reenactment markets. It really is another world, and mostly the people in it are gentle, generous, enthusiastic and very friendly. So we carry on with absolutely nothing normal happening in our lives.